Let's go.
Welcome to the Soul Fam podcast, where we expand your personal universe. I'm Diana Marquetta, and in each episode, Soul Fam co-founder, co-creator Lexi Strummer-Solden and I interview the world's most rising and longtime experts in consciousness, spirituality, entertainment, healing, and science. From Earth's dimensions and dimensions way, way beyond. On the Soul Fam podcast, our frequencies are high and your heart chakras will open as these powerful voices of today share cutting-edge research, profound experiences, and valuable knowledge for your world in this out-of-this-world, thought-provoking, envelope-pushing interviews that could only take place right here on the Soul Fam podcast. Welcome to the Soul Fam podcast. I'm Diana Marquetta, host of the Soul Fam podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe at the end of this podcast, and I am really honored and deeply grateful for the presence of Brett Cotter. He is an award-winning author of the Suicide Prevention Family Handbook, The Stress Is Gone Method, and 3 Keys to Managing PTSD, which if you're in touch with what's going on in the world at the moment, there's no way you can't be a little bit unnerved by some of the significant world events right now. Brett works with clients personally. He works with groups. He has over 25 years of experience helping people break free from emotional pain, trauma, and anxiety. You can find him at his website at Stress Is Gone. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about upcoming workshops that Brett has available and some of the incredible work that he's doing with both men and women. And I'm going to dive into the male aspect of this, but men's roles are changing dramatically and perhaps without some preparation. And so Brett is going to talk today about really working with his men's retreat and men's program and suicide among men in our country. So thank you for coming on today, Brett. I'm sorry for that long introduction, but you've done a lot.
Thank you so much for that great introduction and for having me on. I'm really excited to spend some time with you and talk to you and your listeners today.
Thank you. Our audience is really keyed up. We have a lot of women who listen to this podcast and watch. I know these women are out there supporting their men. They are sometimes at wit's end as to how to support them and help guide them through what is probably a significant change in men's behavior and their emotional relationship with themselves. And I am sure you have a lot of advice or a lot of ideas about how to move into sort of this new system that we have going on. And not everybody's going to like me saying this, but our patriarchal system is changing. Perhaps we're becoming a more balanced system. And I know that your work with the military, your work with corporations, your work with the VA and hospitals, that you've created sort of a system and you have a lot of experience in working with clients on these particular issues. Can we dive into that a little bit right now?
Yeah, I think from the 10,000 square foot view, humanity is going through a transition where it's becoming, we're in the initial stages of more balance between masculine and feminine energy throughout humanity. And I feel for, thousands of years, there has been an overload of masculinity, aggression, things of that nature, and a suppression of the divine feminine. So my work is channeling the divine feminine. And yes, a man can do it because it's just energy, right? So to me, in the universe, there's 2 core components. There's constriction and expansion, right? So when I am tapping into the divine feminine in my coaching, in my teaching, in my retreats, in my workshops, I am channeling a collective higher consciousness that helps everyone present release the tension physically from their body. And as they're doing that, they're unlocking and releasing layers of old emotions from this lifetime throughout generations past, because our ancestors' issues are locked in our DNA. So stuff starts flying off our DNA like hotcakes People are expressing their feelings, unraveling things from their childhood. And as they're doing that, we are anchoring in more of their own divine essence. Because as we let go of chunks of pain that we have with our parents from our childhood, we have more space in the body. You actually feel an open area. And that's where we anchor in our own divine essence. So overall, I feel like there's a big transition. It's going to take time, right? We're probably not going to see it all in our lifetime, but we're actually in the beginning throes of it. That's why there's so much chaos that we see in the world. The masculine, the aggression is struggling to hold on to power, and it's actually fighting itself. So to me, I see like two paths for humanity. There's the group of people that are going to fight each other to the death, and then there's a group of people that are going to work with each other and help each other and love one another. So the more we could kind of like create a dotted line in between, the easier the transition will be for the people that choose to communicate, cooperate, and love one another.
Okay, that sounds nice. How is that achieved? And what do you find in your clients that they seem to be, or in your groups, that they seem to be most blocked by or most challenged by at this time?
It's our own stuff, right? So I feel like every soul that's here came here with a purpose. The people that are on this path, your listeners, the people that come to my retreats, they are usually that one person in their family that was a chain breaker, meant to break those generational and ancestral chains, cords, curses, emotions, right? That recurring pain that comes back generation after generation. So not every person in a family is like that. Usually it's like one person that doesn't buy into the tribal system. It doesn't feel right for them, and they want to break out. And usually when they break out, it's going into like a spirituality kind of pathway, right? But for me, the way to break out is to get into the body, because unlike that book, The Body Keeps the Score, I believe it is. What we do in our work is we face our biggest trigger. Then I use that to unlock and release the emotional pain from the original trauma that's locked away, that trigger is stirring up like a stressful stew within you. So we let those feelings come up. I use my technique to help people express the deep, dark emotional pain that's inside their cells and inside their body. And we go down the rabbit hole and we clear it out. So we will be expressing pain from our childhood, the pain that we have with the parent that we wanted more from, the pain from any life and death experiences that we have, the pains from all of our biggest losses. And what I found is when we heal and resolve the primary relationship with the parent that we wanted more from as a child, and we heal our 3 or 4 most traumatic experiences in our life, we actually get a new lease on life because we see the world differently. We see it more safe and we feel more safe. And ultimately, the biggest change subconsciously in the back of our mind is that no voice to a yes voice, to a yes, I can. When we feel inspired to go learn something, to go do something new.
And I'm curious also, there's the parenting aspect, and then there's sort of the ancestral aspect as well. And so, for instance, in my family, I'm just going to reveal this, we tend to have men who have bad tempers in my family, at least on one side. And so I kind of delved back into that myself, and I thought, well, why is that? What is this? And then sort of got through the lineage and understood that there was a lot of warring gentlemen in the lineage of our family. And it sort of made sense that there might be some underlying rage, if that makes sense, that is passed through. However, for a guy to talk about that or to even consider looking at that, it's great if little sister wants to look into the ancestral trauma of the family and gee, isn't that cute? But for the men in a family to consider that, do you have a tough time breaking through that barrier, or is everybody open and in desperation trying to solve these problems?
So the people that come to me are called to work with me, right? They've been on my website or they heard about me from a friend. So I'm not knocking on everybody's door on the block, right? When I get referred to somebody through word of mouth, or somebody sees something I do on Instagram or on LinkedIn, then they'll reach out to me because they get a sense for what I do, right? And they want help. Often I am like a last line of defense. At every retreat, there's at least a few people that come up to me afterwards and say, this was my last shot. This was the last thing I was trying. And for me, I personally got into this work because I had an issue with jealousy, right? So I got into this work. I was 27 years old. I had the car I wanted, the job I wanted, the money in the bank account I wanted. I was making great money at that age. I had the girl I wanted, the dog I wanted, but I felt like there was something missing. I didn't understand how I could have everything that I've thought I wanted from age 15 on, but something felt missing. And by an incredible sequence of events, I started a meditation class. I went to a workshop for transcendental meditation, and I realized I had a pattern with jealousy. I realized that from age 15 to 27, that was the age I was at that time, all of my relationships ended around 3 years. And at the 18-month mark, these jealous rages started coming out. Right. And that was the ruiner of the relationships. So I was in a relationship at that time, and some of the jealousy was starting to come out, and I wanted to fix it. That's what guys try and do, try and fix things. But I got lucky. I got referred to an amazing healer in Sedona, Arizona. And within 5 minutes of sitting down with this man, the original traumatic memories from when I was 5 years old surfaced. And I was watching my mother and father argue the exact same way that I argued with all my ex-girlfriends from age 15 to 27. So my father was grinding his teeth and clenching his fists. My mother was yelling wildly with her arms going. And I was just sitting there on the rug. I was in the memory as a 5-year-old child, watching this like a sponge, like I was watching a movie. And when all the jealousy started to bubble up, I felt it like as if I was in a jealous rage. I felt all those emotions. When that released, all the anger came up below it. And then all the sadness the anger was protecting came up. And then when that released, the fear of abandonment came up and released. And that fear of abandonment set in place when my parents got divorced when I was 6. So that was a result, right, of that generational trauma. Now, my father was a Vietnam veteran, also a first responder, a New York City firefighter. So he had a ton of trauma from the war, also from his job. However, the generational trauma here really came when he was a young boy and his mother died by suicide in the house. So that's where his fear of abandonment, of losing the feminine, losing the source of love, and his jealousy was born, right? So you can trace these things back, and it almost doesn't matter where it comes from. The only thing that matters is you find where it is in your body, you breathe deeply and slowly into it, you touch it and console it, and you express all the feelings. And then you command your higher power to shine light through it, to unlock it and release it from the inside out. And anyone could do that. It's one of our techniques I talk about all the time, the 4 steps to freedom.
Okay, so I have to ask about that because that sounds like a little bit of magic.
What would you like to know?
Yeah, we have to know. What is that trick? Well, okay. It's interesting, though. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. You got through all the layers. So it wasn't actually jealousy. It seemed like jealousy. It had the appearance of jealousy, but it was something entirely different.
So if you think of the layers of emotion, anger is a top layer. Anger is always protecting a sadness. Sadness is a middle layer. Underneath the sadness is a fear. The fear is born from an illusion. We live in the world of illusion. And it starts when we are young kids and we think our source of love is our parents. And then when they let us down, we feel disconnected from love. And on the back of a birth certificate, it should tell a new parent, every time your child's upset, you put your hand on their heart and you say, love comes from right here, from inside of you, from a very young age. That should be baked into the human being, right? So that's where the illusion starts, when we think love is outside of us.
That is so simple. Really?
Why don't they tell us in school? Right.
Well, we forget who we are when we show up here. So, wow, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay. So tell me about, so is that part of your technique, or is there some other sort of 4-step foolproof formula here?
The foolproof formula is opening your heart to the emotional pain you're experiencing in your body and letting your own divinity shine light through the pain. When the light from your heart goes into the pain, the tension unlocks and releases. It is light diving into tension and opening up expansion. It's just energy, right? It can't be lost or gained, but it can change form, right? So we're changing the form of the energy from tension and tightness to expansion. Fear is tension. Love is expansion. 99999% of the universe is expanding. That's why love will always win in the end. And that's also why love feels good, because we're in the flow of the universe. That's why tension feels bad, because we are out of flow with the universe.
Right? Okay. I'm game with that. Especially since I'm in a place of extreme tension at the moment. Interesting. So interesting. Okay. Going back to the topic of men, they are significantly more successful at suicide, and the number of suicides among men, even in 2025, is already at a fairly high level.
Mhm.
Can you explain that basically from your experience? I can't explain why individuals do it necessarily, but why are they more successful?
Because women are more in touch with their emotions, and it's more natural for women to express their emotions. Men naturally compact their emotions, and extended periods of emotional pain is what flips the switch in our brain, the supercomputer, to find a way out. And after an extended period of time, when stress turns into anxiety, which turns into overwhelm, which turns into hopelessness, which turns into depression, after a while, the suicidal ideation switch gets turned on. And then you start hearing the thoughts. Here's the way out. This is the way out. The brain is a supercomputer. It's always figuring stuff out. But when we've painted ourselves into a corner by holding on and identifying with the emotional pain we're in, I'm in so much pain. I'm so sad. I'll never get out of this. This will never change. It's hopeless. Nothing's going to work. Right there, we're painting ourselves into a corner, right? So the brain just says, okay, here's the way out. So it's like a supercomputer. Now, women, I feel, through repetitions with the depths and breadth of the emotional cycle throughout their entire lives, they are more wired on a deep subconscious level to know this too will pass. What they are feeling will pass because they have felt the depths and the breadths of the human experience, and they know that it passes, right? When a man goes down that rabbit hole, the lights shut off, everything's dark, and they don't see another way out because they don't have those natural repetitions. So I feel like one of the core differences between men and women, there's some emotional wiring differences.
Right.
Men grow up with societal and familial programming of little boys don't cry, men don't cry. I'll give you something to cry about. Now, girls have heard some of that, but on a large scale, men have heard more than that, right? On just to overgeneralize, right? Men have heard more of that. So there's a few locks that I have to pick subconsciously to get a man to open up and to be vulnerable and feel safe enough to be vulnerable, to let all that stuff unpack. And the way I do it is in retreats, I show my vulnerability as a man. I would say in more than half of my retreats, I actually break down and cry. When a person is holding on to their pain, I'll often bring them close to me. Usually I'll embrace them and I will cry their tears and it will unlock and release. It'll come up through me and out. And then they feel safe enough to let themselves break down and actually start crying. So I feel it first. I actually show their cells how to do it. It unlocks and releases in me. And then they feel safe enough to actually move through this and express the depths of their pain. So I find myself as a model of how to do that.
Is that because you're significantly empathic, or is that part of your technique?
I'm just not afraid to feel anymore. I see sadness and tears as a thing of beauty because the sadness is just serenading unconditional love from my heart. So I don't see it as a black hole that I'm never going to get out of.
I see.
I see it as something where the sun is about to rise and shine light on all of it. And that to me is some of the most enriching, most beautiful experiences of my entire life. When I feel it in my own body and when I experience it with somebody else.
I see. So just this sounds stupid or very simple, but it's because perhaps the darkness seems impossible. So as a woman, but even as a cycle, even as a female going through my cycles, I know the pain I'm going through at some point is going to be over with. It's going to subside. It will get easier. So is it perhaps with a gentleman that he does not see that pain as it's a cave, it's someplace you can't get out of, it's someplace where the pain will never subside?
So men are built on logic, and when they start hearing those thoughts, it's never going to change, it's never going to get better. That creates neural pathways that get stronger and stronger every time they think them. It's almost like, let's say they're trying to get out of it, but they hear it's never going to get better. They just made a left turn into a very deep rut if they're driving a car and they're stuck in there. And it's muddy. And when they try to spin the wheels, they dig themselves deeper in. It's never going to get better. It's never going to change. Nothing's going to work, right? This just digs deeper and deeper into that neural pathway. It creates a stronger and stronger neural pathway. It wires into the heart. It wires into the emotions. And it's digging deeper and deeper, where I feel like a woman might have more things that pain is connected to subconsciously in the brain, where it's something it could relate to from the past. right? Like, oh, this was kind of like when I was going through that in my 20s. And I got, oh yeah, I got through it. There might be a little bit more survival or a little bit more hope, if you will, underneath deep in the subconscious. Like, oh, I got through these three things, so I could get through this. But a man, he might have never been in something like that, right? And he might have never crawled out of something like that. Where a woman might have not have gone that deep per se until a time like, let's say we're talking about ourselves. Let's say you're going through something really deep, but it feels deeper than anything else, the pain. But at least if you have repetitions, if you are in an 8-foot pool and you know you could touch the bottom and get out, right? But now you're in a 10-foot pool. It's a little different, but at least you did it in an 8-foot pool and you're like, okay, maybe I could do it. Well, my ears hurt a little bit more when I'm down at the bottom of the 10-foot pool, but I could get out. No big deal. Imagine a guy who only had experience in a 3-foot pool and now he's in a 10-foot pool, right? It's very different. And then the panic sets in. And then, it just becomes an over focus on those negative thoughts. And I feel men also have certain pressures to figure everything out. They might put that on themselves or society. But the guys that I speak with, there's a pressure that they have to figure it out. It's all on them. And there's a lot of letting go of that. So there's a lot of deprogramming when I'm working with a guy. You don't need to know everything, right? It's okay to cry. Those alone are big, like programming buster uppers, right? It's okay to cry. I love to cry. I feel better after a cry. I'm not going to cry forever if I start crying. Right? It's an emotional car wash. It's necessary. It's a part of being alive. I can learn from my emotions. It's a slow process of becoming okay and thawing out all the protection mechanisms against feeling sadness. The biggest thing is, think about like retired firefighters, retired police officers. There's a super high suicide rate.
Yes.
Right? They lose their brotherhood, they lose that connection, and they're disconnected from their next phase or a passion, right? Or a purpose. And the way out is the pain in the body, turning the key on the emotional expression so that you start to let your feelings out. And think about this, those institutions, they, in the military included, they do not foster an environment of emotional expression. It is bullied, teased, looked down upon, right? You'll be taken off duty if you're having mental health issues. Special forces, if they're having a mental health issue, will not be deployed, right? So that's like a big blow to their masculinity, right? These institutions don't have it baked in yet how to support a human being, how to support a man doing the job, right? EMS workers, male and female EMS workers, ambulance drivers, when they go to an accident and there's multiple fatalities, they have to stay on the job till the end of their shift.
Right.
Firefighters, after a big job, they are able to go back to the house, shower, and then there's like a debriefing session, right, with a professional. That's not in the EMS first responders. They don't have that baked in yet, right? And from the large majority of the firefighters I talk to, they don't really open up in those debriefing sessions, and it's one session before they go home, which is not enough.
Right.
So it's there's not enough into the systems in our society that are really helping people deal with those extremely tough jobs.
Exactly. And just my own experience, having done a lot of work with law enforcement through the documentary work I've done as a producer, some of the situations that they're dealing with are almost unreal. So as you said, that compacts. It doesn't go away. It's still there. Even if you talk with somebody about it or relate the experience to someone, is it true that emotion continues to live in the body?
So there was a group of firefighters my dad was friends with. They were also Vietnam veterans, and they would talk to one another, not like other firefighters would talk to each other. They would, that was very healing, right? That was healing. However, my father still had undiagnosed PTSD until all of his friends in his mid-60s were calling him saying, John, you got to go get checked out at the VA. And then he went through the intake, and then he started having recurring nightmares and the whole thing, right? So again, it's the connection between them is very special and necessary, the brotherhood. But even that, more empathy, sympathy, and kind of like communication tools to learn how to communicate and be there for their brother, their sister, their friend that's going through emotional pain. So that's why I wrote the Suicide Prevention Family Handbook, because chapter 1 shows you how to be there for someone that's in emotional pain with body language, with tone, and with these 5 prompts that help you help them. get through the moment and release the emotional pain from their body.
So what are the 5 prompts?
So the 5 prompts, and again, the body language and your tone is very important. You'll be looking into their right eye with your left eye. You'll be leaning slightly forward with your left side, left shoulder. Your left palm will be up on your thigh or on a table. Soft gaze, right? And with these 5 prompts, you say one at a time and then you zip it. You just let them say whatever they want to say. After they're done, then you go to the next prompt. You don't try and fix anything. And these prompts are discovery questions, open-ended questions, right? So the first one is, please tell me more. And then you just let them talk. When they're done, you lean in with childlike curiosity and compassion. And as you're listening, you're breathing deeply and slowly into your own stress, because when you hear their pain, you're going to naturally get stressed out. It's important to release your own tension by touching it and breathing into it. And that will release so you can stay present and continue to open your heart and listen. So the first one again was, please tell me more. When they're done speaking, you just lean in again and say, I want to hear everything. You let them say a whole nother plume of emotions and thoughts. When they're done, you lean in again and you say, what's the hardest part to talk about? A whole nother plume of emotions and thoughts is going to come up. Okay. It's very important that you are touching your own tension, breathing into it and releasing it. And if they say, why are you touching your chest or your stomach? You say, I really feel what you're saying. And they're going to be like, wow, this person's in it with me. Right. And then the fourth one is, what's your biggest fear about that? Now you are underneath the subconscious divide. Normally, when we are arguing with our family members, a spouse, or we're kind of like going back and forth, it's all on the conscious level. But we are going now underneath into the subconscious level. When you're getting into what's the hardest part to talk about and what's your biggest fear about that. Now you've surfaced the thing that's driving their pain. And then you go into the last question or the last prompt, which is, what does that feel like? Now they're in the body. The body, and specifically the area of tension that they feel, is where the cellular memories are that are fueling all this pain. The body's like a library. Usually the memories are in the chest, solar plexus, stomach, or the throat. Sometimes it's in the neck, the shoulders, the spine, but usually it's along the central corridor where our chakras are, right? And that's where the emotional memories are often stored, inside the organs. And there's different trends of pain. So if you feel tension in your throat, the trend is that's where you knew what to say, but you held your words back anyway. So if you have an issue with a spouse, your parent, a supervisor, you feel like you can't say your truth, that's where that pain usually stores. The heart is when we're under the illusion that we're disconnected from love. The solar plexus is where we store the pain of giving our power to somebody or having our power taken away. And the stomach, around the belly button, is where we've been pushing our emotions down for decades. Okay. So we have a thing called the emotional body model, where it shows you where all the emotions store in your body and the affirmations on how to release it. And then based on where they feel their emotion, you use that emotional body model to guide them through a simple affirmation to release the tension. And that's how that communication protocol works.
What's the simple affirmation?
Well, it's all different for different areas of the body. So if you hold tension in your head, sometimes people get headaches when they are stressed out. So if you have migraines or headaches like that, you would say, however you refer to a higher power, for the terms of our conversation, we'll use the word universe. Universe, right where it's too much to think about, I hand it over to you to figure it all out. And you do that with your hands. Like you're handing over all your issues that are too much to think about on a silver platter to the universe, right? So right where it's too much to think about, I hand it over to you to figure it all out. And as you're doing that, you're breathing deeply and slowly and just kind of washing your hands and going like that. And then you're breathing deeply and slowly. Repeating that affirmation 3 to 5 times while you're breathing deeply and slowly, that has made migraines go away. That makes headaches go away. So if you hold tension in your face, sometimes when we get stressed, if we are facing too much, we hold tension in our face, right? Sometimes if we hold tension in our eyes, that's what we saw too much, maybe as a child, right? If it's in our shoulders,
Interesting.
We have overwhelming responsibilities, usually from being like the firstborn in our family with a lot of siblings, and we took on a role in our family of handling too many responsibilities to hopefully get some unconditional love from one or both of our parents, right? To gain approval. But we were doing everything. And we often that replicates in our professional lives and in our current family life, where we're like the duct taper and the fixer, and we lost ourselves in that role. So that's where pain is in the shoulders. And it's like right where I took on too many responsibilities, I break free. I am free right where I took on all those old obligations and responsibilities. Right now, for all eternity, I am free. So the spine, that's where we have memories of not feeling supported. So people will tell me like, oh no, my back pain is from when I got a car accident 5 years ago. I said, okay, leading up to that car accident, the 6 months before that, and right up to the car accident, did you feel supported by your female partner, right? By your wife? Did you feel supported by your mother? Do you have any issues receiving support? If the pain's on the left side, it's related to female. If the pain's on the right side of the spine, it's related to the male and throughout the whole body. And then often they'll say, well, actually, we were going through a totally tough time in our marriage, and I felt like everything was on my back. I had to do everything with no support from nobody. Okay. So then the residual pain from the surgery, we will do affirmations around feeling supported. And then we'll work through any issues they might have from childhood around not feeling supported by either parent. And then ultimately we bake in being supported by the universe. So when someone starts to feel supported by the universe, those issues start to unlock and release from the cellular memory. And ultimately what we're doing is we're introducing your spirit, your pure life force energy into the tension inside your body. And as we do that, we release layers of emotional pain and we break free from the old programming.
Wow. It sounds amazing. In a way, it sounds super simple. There are other techniques you use that incorporate multiple disciplines. Is that correct? Breath work. You just mentioned affirmations. There's other things that I wouldn't necessarily think would be traditional to your sort of work. Is that correct? Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, it's funny. When a mental health professional comes to our workshops, towards the end, they'll be like, this was amazing. You used everything. You used it all. You pulled the best from this. Now, I don't know all the names of their techniques and all the acronyms, right? But what I'm doing is I'm channeling, right? So when I'm in a room with 35 people and I'm feeling the issues in the room, in their body. So I'm an empath and I'm clairsentient. So I can feel their emotional pain. I feel the tension. And then I could sense where it's coming from when I zone in on a singular person, right? And I could sense, okay, it's coming from the mother's side, the father's side, or a trauma or tragedy when they were 25, things like that. And then I tune into a ball of light that's above the room that is a collective higher power for all of us. And then I start listening to that ball of light and I'm getting words and it shows me pictures of what to do. So once in a while, I'll bring somebody up to the front. We'll do a movement and we'll say something. The movement will open up an energy field or a meridian or a chakra, and then we'll say certain things to release the old consciousness. Usually it's the opposite logic of the consciousness that was baked in there, either from their ancestors or from a trauma that happened this lifetime. And as they're doing the movement and they're repeating the affirmation after me that I'm getting from the collective higher power or their higher self personally, it unlocks and releases the tension, the trauma, and the pain. So it's kind of like some people said the retreat was like going to a bar mitzvah or a wedding that was also doing amazing group therapy session. It was like all baked into one. Because we use movement and music. We use Motown.
Really?
Yeah, we use sometimes tribal music, Motown, rock and roll. It really depends on the group that's there.
Huh.
Right? Yeah.
That sounds cool, actually.
It's amazing. I'm addicted to it. I've been like a moth to a flame to this work for 25 years.
Does that still stem from that experience when you were 27? And I got to say, at 27, that's great that you had that experience. So it wasn't that you figured it out at 56 or 65 or 70. It's that at 27, you recognize this.
So at 27, I had an experience where I was blinded by the light. Oh. It took me 10 years to get my bearings around what happened. Right? Now, in those 10 years, I was helping people, I was coaching, I was doing retreats. Even 6 months ago, I'm figuring out and understanding greater purpose of why that happened in my life, why that experience happened in my life. And in a way, I feel ultra lucky that it happened to me. But what I will say is that I listened to every sign. My path to get to that healer was not like a random email blast. I was listening to the signals and the signs the universe was showing me for 6 months religiously, right? And I said yes. And what I found was when I take one step towards the universe, it takes 100 towards me.
Oh.
And I took, in that 6-month period to get to that healer, I took major steps that were outside of my everyday routine, that were outside of my everyday protocol. I was in a very expansive place where I was like a kid in a candy store, like, oh, I want to try this, I want to do that. And it was like channeling, learning remote viewing, learning meditation, learning all different healing modalities, learning how to connect with my higher self, right? Getting up at 5 a.m, doing spiritual exercises. There were times where I would meditate for 8 to 10 hours on a weekend straight because I just wanted to go deeper and deeper into the inner universe to then expand the outer universe. So I was going inside on the meditation, and then I was finding the universe was right there, and it was a very special time in my life. And I'm ultra grateful I even got to experience it. And now I just share, bits and pieces of it and spread that light in the coaching sessions, in our trainings, and in our retreats.
When you say you were blinded by the light, was there something specific that happened?
Yes.
Do you mind sharing it?
It's very different than anything that we ever hear of, right? So I told you what happened with that healer. Within 5 minutes, I was inside of a movie in the experience as a 5-year-old child. I was on the carpet that was in that house when I was watching my mother and father argue, right? I was in the scene. As the pain came up and unlocked and released, that healer's hand turned red and light started pouring through his hand. It went into my body. It opened up my heart. At one point, he disappeared and a light being was standing before me, pouring light into my body. It was similar to being on a beach if you've let soft waves just kind of come up over your body and wash over you. It was constant waves of unconditional love energy radiating from this being through every aspect of my being. I felt every cell in my body. I felt every cell in my eyelashes, my hair, my eyebrows, my toenails. I felt every cell in my body. And it was saturated and being bathed with unconditional love. And as this was happening, my heart was opening and healing. And the experience took me a long time to understand why this happened to me, what I'm supposed to do with that experience. Like, how do you go back to work, right? And this experience was so life-changing that when I went back home, I did my normal routine on Monday, which was run a mile on a treadmill. I was normally running a 10 to 12 minute mile. I started running. I was like, wow, it feels so easy. I just kept on going faster and faster and faster. I was done with the mile just over 6 minutes, and I didn't break a sweat. There was a biological change inside of me. When I went to work that morning, people were like, oh, is that a new suit? Did you get a haircut? Now, I've been wearing the same suit for 18 months on Mondays, right? Every day of the week, I had 5 suits. So it was like I had my day for my suits. And and I would just laugh. And a few months later, I left that job and really went on my spiritual journey.
Super cool. Super cool. I'm so glad you had that experience, and thank you for sharing it. I could feel it. I could really, really, really feel that. Amazing. Do you have any thought about who that angel was or who that being was?
It was a light being. Yeah. I know who it was.
Cool. Amen.
Yeah. Before the light being showed up, there was a number of faces that were showing up in clouds. And when I was doing research 25 years ago, and I was living in California about what that was, and this has nothing to do with anything racial, but there is this thing called the Great White Brotherhood, right? But it's like ethereal, energetic beings. And some of them were related to lifetimes of Moses, Abraham, different prophets, right? But I kept on seeing these faces. Usually they had some longer hair with a beard. And again, that's just how I received it. If somebody else in a different part of the world, grew up how they grew up, they would probably receive it in a way that they can receive it. Now, remember, I grew up in Queens, in New York, in a Catholic elementary school and high school. So I grew up knowing God through Jesus because we had to go to church a lot, right? My mother brought us on Sundays, and then we would have to go during school. I think it was once a month on Fridays and at all the holidays. And so I equated God with Jesus. So when I saw that light being, it was in the form of Christ. However, I believe we all receive God as we know God to be. So whatever that is for the individual, that's just what it happened to be for me.
Yes, I understand.
But that's who it was and what it was.
Wow. Amazing. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right. I want to go back to talking. That's just amazing. I got to get over that for a second, but I want to talk a little bit about going it's wonderful that you had that experience. Do you share that with other men?
Just with you. No, I'm only kidding. I share it. I share it not so often because just the way religion has set into humanity, it's caused so much divide,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's easy to take what happened to me and spin it into religion,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I've had many meditations with the Buddha,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've had meditations with and remote viewing experiences with Hindu deities, right? So I'm not about religion. I'm about what we truly are, below the body, below the emotions, below the thoughts. We're
Right.
pure consciousness. We're consciousness. And so I don't share that story often for that reason, but it is me. And I'm glad you asked the question and, you brought it out. Yeah. Sometimes in retreats, I may have said that story once in a retreat. I did an Instagram live on Easter Sunday, and I told that story, I believe, for the first time on Instagram. But you actually, if you go on our reels and you scroll down, you'll see the cover is me, and I think it says Easter message, and there's a picture of Jesus faded in the corner with, I think it's a red beam of light and a blue beam of light coming out of the high heart, right? That flame above the heart that people see often in images of Jesus, that little flame above. And that's the image if anyone wants to hear that story a little bit more in depth.
The reason I ask is because it sort of encourages girls will talk about our weird experiences, or we'll gab among ourselves. I think men might be reluctant to talk about something like that or be suspicious of it, even if they've experienced it. So that's sort of why I asked, because I was curious if that encourages other men to sort of allow that to enter them, for them to experience it.
So I've worked with guys that have seen things and experienced things. There was one session many years ago, I think it was 2004. There was an old friend that was struggling with suicidal ideation. And it was probably the second time I've worked with somebody that was struggling with suicidal ideation. In the session, he saw light come out of my throat. And then he, in the back of his mind, kept on saying, I want more. And then he was all of a sudden next to a stream in a garden, walking hand in hand with Jesus. Now, he also went to that same grade school and that same high school. So he understands God through that mode, through that lens as well. And the similarity between my story, what happened to me, and what happened to him, in both having an experience with Christ and sitting in front of somebody that's a healer, is when the energy started to get strong, we both, in the back of our mind, were saying more. I want more. Because that's what I was saying when I was in that session when I was 27, 9. When the energy started to open up, I leaned back, put my palms up, and just received. And I said, I want more. And I felt like I was finally arriving at the thing I always knew was there. So I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. You actually did answer my question in a roundabout way, that it encourages men to sort of be less suspicious of what they might experience. I know some guys who've had some things and they sort of go, wow, there must have been my guardian angel watching out for me that day, or whatever it might be. But they're going to share it with me, but they're not going to share it with a bunch of other guys. So I think it's that. What I'm trying to get at is that men have just as much ability to grasp their higher consciousness and their higher powers as women do. We are encouraged a little bit more, perhaps at this time, or have been previously, whereas men aren't encouraged or allowed, or it's not an open thing. So I'm just curious if in your retreats, that's something that you're finding, is that men are opening up to this to their benefit.
I feel everyone's opening up to it. I feel that humanity is going through like a DNA cleansing right now, and all of the gunk is on the surface. So I feel like the universe is a slow-moving masterpiece. Certain frames of the show or the movie are very messy, and it's at times we can't even see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I feel everyone is is slowly awakening to this. And not everyone is meant to. I shouldn't say everyone. The people that are meant to do this work this lifetime are awakening to it. And it might not be today or tomorrow. It could be in a few years from now. But I feel like everyone's that is meant to do this work has that little flicker or that little intrinsic curiosity of that either something's off here in the world and there's something more that we're not seeing. And ultimately, I feel we're going through this DNA cleansing, and women are quicker to the starting line and the finish line because they're feelers, and the DNA is the finest expression of our physical bodies, right? So we have to feel it physically. To enlighten and to open up our gifts and to release tension and pain, we have to become good feelers within our own skin. So often, emotional pain, childhood trauma, it forces us out of our body and into our heads. And that's why there's so much mental illness throughout the planet, because our consciousness has felt that it's not safe to be in the heart because of all the pain in the heart, goes up here, and now there's too much energy here and it fractures our thought process.
I see.
Right? So as we heal the pain in the body, our consciousness gets more balanced and comes back into the body and anchors in the body where it should be. And we become a more well-rounded being, right? As that's happening, our gifts start to open up. We become more empathic, sympathetic, become better listeners. It's another thing. The world is so stressed out. We're on a shortage of listeners. How many good listeners do you have in your family or in your friend group, right? That people that can just sit there and just ask you similar prompts to those 5 prompts. Please tell me more. And they just listen. I want to hear everything. What's the hardest part to talk about? And they're just listening. No agenda, just witnessing your pain, right? So I hope I answered your question that time.
Yeah, you did. It's a fascinating interview. I feel like it's very expansive and we're opening up and we're approaching things in a whole new way. I know that you said often that the men that come to your retreats are sort of this is their last hope. This is they're in a bit of a desperation or feel they're in a desperate moment. Is that right? Am I reading that right?
So I wouldn't say that because it's been male and female participants have said that at the end of retreats, right?
Right.
Most of our retreats are like 85% female.
Okay.
Right. And because of the book I wrote in 2015, The 3 Keys to Managing PTSD, we started working with a lot of veterans and first responders. Then we opened up a nonprofit, stressisgone.org.
Oh, cool.
Our main website is stressisgone.com. That's a for-profit company. But men and women equally have said after a retreat, with tears in their eyes, thank you. This was my last stop. This was the last thing I was given a chance to. And the workshop and the retreats and the coaching, it just reconnects you with your true essence, your own divine essence, pure life force energy, the part of you that is underneath everything we see, right? It's almost like this. Like when you turn a light bulb on in your house, there's a plug that goes into the wall. Then that is wired to the panel, usually in your garage. Then that goes wired to the street. Then that goes to a power plant. So when you turn on that light, are you the light bulb or the power plant? I help people to understand that they're actually the power plant. And then when you are able to let life force energy course through your body, you don't get so caught up into all the chaos and the stress that you're seeing. You're like, oh yeah, let me breathe and receive pure life force energy. Let me breathe into the emotions. Let me express them. And let me say one of those affirmations to connect myself to my higher consciousness, my higher faculties, the ability to think and see things on a more broad level, right? So that's what the work is in general. We have our first men's retreat coming up July 4th weekend, Independence Day weekend, which is very exciting. We've been doing women's retreats and co-ed retreats for years, but this is our first men's retreat. So I'm super excited about that. .org, stressisgone.org, we have a whole place where companies and individuals can sponsor veterans and first responders to get to the retreat if those veterans or first responders that they know in their lives or local veterans are struggling financially and they want to sponsor somebody. It's only $750 to sponsor a veteran to get to that retreat. So it's, really exciting. My wife and I do this work together. She leads the movement, the dance sessions. I lead the meditation sessions and the emotional healing sessions. And then we usually have a sound bath practitioner come in with like 6 gongs, 30 bowls, all these other instruments. So we're hitting it at every angle.
It sounds fabulous. Really, it sounds wonderful. Tell me, the men's retreat is for the July weekend. Where are you having this one at?
So this one's about 90 minutes north of Manhattan in Rhinebeck, New York at the Omega Institute. My first time there was like 15 or 20 years ago. I always had a dream of doing retreats there. COVID happened and we just so happened to apply at like 2 a.m. and they got back to us at 9 a.m. the next morning. And I think we applied to do a 2-day retreat and they're like, we want you to come in for a 5-day retreat. So that was, and we were like, oh my God, this is amazing. So ever since then, we've been doing retreats there every summer. We've grown to 2 retreats a summer there. And we've also grown to Kripalu, Shivananda, Bahamas on Paradise Island, the Himalayan Institute, the New York Open Center, the Tibet House in New York City. And we're also talking to a bunch of other places in California, North Carolina, Colorado. So yeah, everything's starting to just start to grow, and we're in a really good place with it. But this retreat is going to be really special. It's our first one just for men. And what I found is when we got women together by themselves without men, the retreat went like 2 or 3 layers deeper. And I know that's going to happen with the men because a few of the men that have been coming to our retreats for years have kind of asked me last year, like, hey, do you think you'll do a men's retreat? So this has been a long time in the coming.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm hearing more and more about men's groups, men's support groups, men's retreats. So it feels as though there's a void that needs to be filled there, and that guys are open to it now and hungry for it, wanting it.
Yeah. And when you're in a co-ed retreat, sometimes it's tough to talk about what we want to express around sexual abuse or, just pain we have around our sexuality. Right. And when the retreats are not co-ed, we get through and we release so many deep layers of like sexual abuse, things where our sexual energy was morphed. We're releasing all the old judgment, pain, anything that was layered over it. And then we unlock and release our own divine energy underneath the sexuality. So it starts to come out in a more centered way, where it doesn't come out sideways out of control, where it releases all the manipulation around it, and we could just be with it, right? And also, I know what's going to happen is we're going to unlock and release anger, jealousy, fear of not knowing what to do, anxiety, all deeper layers of these emotions in our men's retreat. Because I'm going to lead the charge in being vulnerable and feeling safe. And the safer I feel and the more vulnerable I am, that's when my true power comes out. And participants feel it, resonate with it, and vibrate with it. And then it starts releasing the issues that were buried within them. And ultimately, it's really just freeing them energetically to feel safe enough to really be in our body and feel good in our own skin again. And that's really the goal of all our retreats.
It sounds fabulous, and I really appreciate that. Thank you for touching on the aspect of sexual abuse as well. I think hopefully you can come back on the show. I'd love to talk about that more, simply because a lot of times, especially men, it's something that's buried. It's beautiful to hear that at your men's retreat, these issues can potentially be addressed and give the guys some relief.
That's exactly what we do. I'm just, diving into the tension in the body, and we're opening up expansion, and you just really feel layers. And as the layers are releasing, it's almost like, you ever play that game when you were a kid when you had a deck of cards? You're like, oh, you want to play 52 pickup? And then you just squeeze the cards and they all go flying. It was like a bad joke. Maybe I just did this.
No, I understand what you mean.
It's like a joke. Like, oh, you want to play 52? You squeeze the card deck and then they all just fly everywhere, right? And when the waves of emotion are unlocking and releasing, you're actually seeing memories pop up and release. And as they're releasing, like each card has a memory on it, and the wind takes it, and it's just blowing in the wind until you can't even see it anymore. And that memory becomes so faded, it becomes invisible. And when you think of it, there's no emotional reaction after we've processed it. And that's when I say that memory, that trauma, whatever it was, is fully resolved. When you could think of it without having any emotional reaction, any negative thinking, and you just feel at peace with it. So that's my goal in where I bring people through a weekend retreat, 5-day retreat that we do in our coaching. That's really the goal.
If you had one thing that you wanted to say to sort of society in general right now, and I realize we talked a lot about men in general here, but in general, is there one thing that you would like to leave for our audience that they can sort of sit with until they have the opportunity to see you in person?
You are love. We are all eternal. All this is just a story, even though it feels real. Even the body is just a story. You are behind all of it in a sea of eternal love.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. We will close on that. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for holding space for this and for doing this and everything you've been through and all your decisions to even come to this place, to arrive here, to do this kind of podcast. Thank you so much for being you and for sharing, with your audience and everything you do. It was an honor to be with you.
No, my honor. And thank you so much for talking about all the things you did. I think the audience is going to love it. I'm going to leave all of the information about Brett below in the description, how to get in touch with him, how to attend the retreat. There'll still be a little time between the time that we publish this and the retreat itself. And I'm sure future retreats also. So look forward to bringing all of this to the audience. And thank you so much for your time and your heart and the beauty that you bring this world.
Thank you so much. And I just want a final reminder, if anyone wants coaching or to attend the retreat, you could find out all about that at stressisgone.com. If you're a veteran or a first responder and you want to apply for an 85% scholarship to the retreat, go to stressisgone.org. And if you're an organization that wants to support and sponsor veterans to get to the retreat, go to stressisgone.org.
Beautiful. Exactly. And I think our first responders go through more than we ever know. So thank you for mentioning that.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Soul Fam audience, for listening and watching. And please remember to like and subscribe. And please go on stressisgone.com. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Soul Fam podcast. Be sure to tune in to every episode where we dive into a different rabbit hole of the known and unknown to empower you in conscious living and exploration of the greater universe. We hope you leave each episode with a little stardust in your hair and inspiration in your heart. With love from your Soul Fam.